Welcome on into the Wolverine.com live show. Clayton Safey here with Chris Ballas on a Monday night. Our Anthony Broom is going to be out tonight, but we will carry the show here and take your Michigan football and basketball questions. We got a couple random ones in the queue as well. If you want to ask a question, go ahead and get yourself in that live chat here on YouTube. You can also do a super chat that will get you right to the front of the line. We'll answer that as soon as possible. CB, how's it going?
Good, man. Raining like crazy here, which is good. We needed rain. So there you have it. That's today's weather report.
As some people know, the loyal ones know, Chris was almost a meteorologist.
Yeah. Yes, I was. Yep. Some days I wish I still was. So depends on the message board day. Just kidding. I love it. I love this job.
So I trust his opinion when it comes to the weather. And yes, we did need some rain. Make sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button on our channel as well. We just crossed the 22,000 subscriber mark. So thank you to everybody that has gone ahead and done that. You can always join us over at thewolverine.com for all of our coverage. Become a premium subscriber and interact on our message board as well. We're over there 24/7. We're brought to you tonight by Rogue Shop. Before we get into some of our questions, rogueshop.com. We want to talk about our pals Richard and Shar. They are craft cannabis farmers specializing in small batch sustainable plant medicine. Richard is a disabled combat veteran, and his wife is a certified CBD consultant and life coach. They're out of Eau Claire, Wisconsin. They work to not only grow and manufacture, but also educate the population about THC-based medicines. If you're looking for products that can help diffuse stress and anxiety, soothe chronic pain and insomnia, then Rogue Shop is the place for you. Their menu of products will be absolutely perfect. They also hop on live chats with you right on their website to consult you and help people that are new, or they're just trying to find something different that'll work for them. So again, sleeping issues, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress, they can help you out. Go to rogueshop.com, use the promo code TheWolverine for 10% off. So thank you to Richard and Shar for all your support over the last several months. Again, get the questions in the live chat. We will get to those, and the super chats will be to the front of the line. But we do have some questions to start off from our subscribers over at thewolverine.com on our message board, The Fort. And the first one is in regards to NIL from our good friend Jay Sherba, who has been longtime loyal dude. He said, is the positive movement with Ward and Empower that Chris Ballas reported today an indicator of things to come for improved NIL efforts with basketball, or is this all still strongly football focused? And then he's also wondering what's going to go on our grill on 4th of July weekend. We'll start with the first one. Jacob, right now it seems like Empower is just football focused, but creating some waves. They were in Ann Arbor last night. They've been to Grand Rapids, Chicago, New York, and I believe they're in Washington, D.C. as we speak. But Chris, you had a great update today. We're not going to give it all away, but people can go check that out at thewolverine.com. But your thoughts on this question?
Yeah, you know what? They need to do work in basketball. There's no question about it. And at the same time, Jim Harbaugh is out there front and center leading this thing for football. So you'd like to see Juwan Howard be maybe a little bit more proactive in that respect. And I'm not saying that they've done enough to help him out, because they have not. In fact, it's been I don't want to call it embarrassing, but really lacking in that respect in terms of the support that they're getting for NIL. And, it does seem that Ward Manuel has changed his tune a little bit. Last week he came out and he said he's always been a proponent of NIL. I don't know that it's really true. Frankly, I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying maybe not as stringent about it as he's being now. And, at least he's at this meeting in Ann Arbor saying, look, we want you guys to help support it. It doesn't seem like a competition for the money anymore, which is a good thing. So, and it can't be if you're going to be successful. If you're going to go about it in this way, then you're going to have to really be creative. And I think that's what they're doing with Empower. So, but it is lacking in the other sports, and it needs to pick up flat out. That's all there is to it. So it's disappointing. I give Juwan Howard credit for the transfers that he has signed and the recruiting that he's done, despite not getting the help these last couple of years, but he needs more.
For sure. And I'm not, I agree. Basketball has to step it up. And it's kind of an interesting situation, because if you look at Juwan Howard, he's coming into next season with a lot of pressure on him, right? I mean, you don't miss the tournament 2 years in a row at Michigan. That just really isn't gonna be something that you would think would fly with this program, the way it was kind of rebuilt in the late 2000s there under John Beilein. But at the same time, not excusing what happened last season or what has happened with some of the struggles throughout his tenure. He's also had some success, obviously, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, hey, Juwan, you got to win, if you're the administration. And Juwan can look right back at them and say, hey, I need to be supported here. This program, and it's not that the administration is going to do everything, but how do you see that? Because now it feels like it's kind of more complicated when it comes to, I don't want to say hot seat, but just the way that, we should view Juwan Howard's, potential future here.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not going to support him, then what are you going to do? Get rid of him and hire the next guy that you're setting up to fail?
And the next guy will have the same issues.
Exactly. Yeah. And so they needed to really have a plan a couple of years ago. And we've said this many times, and they didn't. And now they're kind of scrambling and playing catch up. And that's the disappointing part of all of this. And Juwan Howard made that perfectly clear last year when we talked to him in his first press conference of the season. He said, all of us, we need to be better. And, I think he's frustrated, and I think he has the right to be frustrated. So there's only so much you can do, especially in basketball, which has always been, all sports have had their seedier side of recruiting, but basketball is the worst. And I've covered basketball recruiting for 20 something years at the Wolverine.com, and it's worse than ever. So, you've got to have the tools to succeed, and they have not had those. So I'm hoping that folks step up. Otherwise, your coaches are going to say, I don't need this, and they're going to go somewhere else or look somewhere else that gives them a better opportunity. So if you want to succeed at the highest level, which I think Michigan does, leaders invest and all that, and rather than just, okay, here's our budget, and what, if we win, 18 games and make the NIT or something like that, that's fine. Then you need to step it up. So we'll see what happens, but I do feel for Juwan and hope at the same time that he's learned some lessons from last year too. That was a team that definitely should have made the tournament and did not. They had some issues with injuries and stuff like that. But when you have 2 lottery picks, Hunter Dickinson in the middle, guys like that, you should be playing in that field of 68.
I agree. And there's so much that goes into being the head of a program right now too. What's going on your grill this weekend? Jacob Sherba wants to know.
I'm going to be out of town, man. I'm going to be on a boat on the 4th of July. So who knows? Yeah. Maybe. I'm kind of dieting a little. You get the July, maybe some strawberries and a banana or something like that.
That's fair.
So, yeah. Usually it's ribs, guys. Big slab of ribs. And yeah. So, and God bless America. That's what I got to say. That's
right. USA. We'll be doing probably a couple different grill sessions, but burgers, brats, maybe some dog, steak. I mean, you name it. This is America. We can do whatever we want. Throw whatever we want on that grill.
America.
That's right. So thank you to Jacob Sherba, one of our top listeners and viewers here on the Wolverine. Let's move over to CT Blue 72. He says, don't take the Phil Steele route. Who wins the Big Ten and why? And for the people who didn't see this, so Phil Steele, his preseason magazine came out, I think, last week. Basically, he's predicting the Big Ten. He has Michigan and Ohio State tied atop the Big Ten East. And then based on his rankings of Michigan finishing 3rd in the country, he has Michigan winning the Big Ten. I don't think it's a total cop-out because we've seen this play out. There's been, divisions that, or 2 teams that have tied for that division. So last year divisions here happened in 2021. Michigan, Ohio State tied. Michigan goes because of the tiebreaker. Happened in 2018. Ohio State goes to the Big Ten championship because of the tiebreaker. Spoiler, I do have Michigan winning the Big Ten, but I guess, CB, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that was my prediction. I said it could be a 3-way tie even, and then you're going to have a tiebreaker. I think Michigan could lose at Penn State, and I'm not, as of now, that would be, if they're going to lose a game, that's the one I predict. So Ohio State's going to be tougher than people think. It's hilarious to say that. Here we are 2 years removed from 2020.
It sounds crazy. So weird.
It does sound weird, but you know what? I would agree with you. I have Michigan winning the Big Ten. I think they'll be favored to win the Big Ten. I think they'll beat Ohio State at home, and I think you'll have both of those schools with 1 loss. So that's the way I see it. And you know what? It's the last year for this because you're going to have no more of the East and West divisions. You're going to have, the flexes and the pods and all that stuff. And who knows what to expect in the future. So, but winning 3 in a row would be quite the accomplishment. And what a way to end this thing, right? That started with leaders and legends and is now East and West and going to whatever, then to go out with 3 in a row and prove that you are the big dog, so that you're the big man on the block. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. But I don't see Michigan getting unscathed, going through the schedule unscathed. That's awfully hard to do. And as much as I think they'll be favored to win in every game, it is extremely hard, folks. Go back and look in history to go through the season undefeated.
Definitely. Yeah, I could see that happening. And here's the thing too, that, in Michigan has so much talent. We know what they have coming back. The expectations are super high. This would be the year where you got to pretty much live up to those expectations, because I'm not going to say the game against Ohio State and some of those regular season games are going to mean less in the future, but you're going to 12 teams in the playoff. I mean, you make it, you may win the national championship and not make the Big Ten championship game because of the competition that's going to be in this league. So if they could cap off this era of the Big Ten, this era of college football, by making the playoff again, by winning the Big Ten again, I think it would put a real stamp, on things here in this era and position themselves incredibly well going into 2024 when so many things are going to be different in this sport. And we're already seeing so many changes, but with the format and the conference and expansion and everything like that.
I think I saw a super chat that calling Anthony a blowhard. It must have been one of his buddies, because everybody knows that Anthony's not a blowhard. I'm going to guess that that's somebody with the last name that Anthony knows. So Anthony's
$2. He's the best. AB is amazing.
Yep. Thanks for the $1.99 to let us sing the praises of our teammate.
Yep. Wouldn't rather work with any other team than we do on a daily basis.
Without question. Love our team.
Absolutely. The team.
You got it.
Tristan is wondering, is Donovan Edwards going to get more attempts in the backfield with Corum, or are they going to use him in the receiving game? This is something we talk about each and every week, it seems like.
Tristan Bounds? Tristan Bounds with the question?
Tryston.
Oh, okay. A different Tristan. He's changing it up, He's trying to throw us off.
And is Tristan Bounds going to start at left tackle? He won.
That is a no, but he's improving. And read about that in your football preview. I talked to Sharon Moore about him, so he's got the length. As for Donovan Edwards, I think you're going to see him. They're going to line him up at receiver some more. You're going to see some 2-back sets, in my opinion, where they do some different things with them. And he's going to get his carries. Listening to Jim Harbaugh talk, I want to get 10 for him and maybe 9 for Donovan, or 10 each, and so on and so forth. It's not going to happen that way. If they're in a tight game, Blake Corum's going to carry the ball 20, 25 times at least. So that's just the way it is. You heard it here first. So, but Donovan Edwards is going to get his touches. He is a special athlete, as Jim Harbaugh always likes to say. And as Mike Hart has said a million times, he could start at slot receiver for just about any team in the country. So when you have talents like that, you have to have them on the field. These guys are both proven. They are home run hitters. And in this day and age, and especially against the teams like the Georgias and the Alabamas that they'll be playing in the playoff, then you're going to need guys like that. So that's my opinion on it. I strongly believe that.
Yeah, I think they're going to move around. I think we'll see him in the slot. I think we'll see him on the field together at times. I was thinking about this last week, and just to myself, as just somebody who has the sickness of basically thinking about Michigan and college football all the time. And I was just thinking, I think Blake's going to be healthy. I think he's going to have a fantastic season, but I'm excited to see, one, him come back, but two, how much better Donovan Edwards is going to get. I mean, think of the leaps Blake Corum has made. Think of how much better Donovan Edwards has gotten under Mike Hart's tutelage. He could take a huge leap this season. He got some much needed experience as a ball carrier at the end of last season. What if he overtakes that starting running back job? I'm not predicting that. I think Blake Corum's going to be your bell cow, but a kid this talented, the sky's kind of the limit. So it'll be interesting to see. Yeah, beginning of the season, I think it's a little more predictable. Again, I'm not predicting this, but just how it's going to go with how you piece things together the rest of the way. It'll probably depend on the week, but it's just going to be something to watch. I think they got two incredibly talented guys back there.
And I do want to say what I love most about it is the brotherhood between them. I actually got a DM. I got a DM from Donovan last week when I wrote an article about some of the things that Blake had told us for an exclusive for the Wolverine, when he was saying, what you're talking about his relationship. And Donovan wanted to read it because Donovan had great things to say about Blake. And all Blake was talking about was how happy he was for Donovan in that Ohio State game. As much as it hurt him that he couldn't play, to watch Donovan Edwards, he goes, I see the work he puts in. That's my brother. I love him so much. And, Donovan read it and he's like, so that's the bond between these guys. You love it, man. And I think that's got the ability to be one of the top running back duos in Michigan history. I think I already had him as top 5 in the last 40 years in the football preview. You guys can read about that as well. Clay will give us a shout out here and how to order that magazine here pretty soon. But love the chemistry and the dynamic between these two guys.
That fires me up right there. And our Anthony Broom, speaking to him too, and we'll get to Tim's super chat in just a second. He talked to Donovan a few weeks ago up in Traverse City, and they were asking about, hey, because Donovan, when I talked to him in January, he said, yeah, there's some pros and cons to Blake coming back. He's not going to get as many carries potentially, but he loves him and he wants to play next to him and win another championship with him. But his tune was a little bit different this summer, saying, let's just win. Who cares? Let's just win. And that's kind of the mentality of these guys. And let's get to Tim's super chat. $5, and this is Tim Cornier. Cornet, and I hope I pronounced. Yeah, well, hopefully that's right.
You've met him, by the way.
Tim. No, I know Tim.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is Jake Moody's godfather?
Correct.
And he says, "Happy pre-4th." Right back at you, Tim. Hopefully you'll be a 49ers fan this year. I will. Keep up the great work, guys. Tim, I'm going to be rooting for him. I already kind of have a little bit of a soft spot for them. I just like the way they play, and I like some of their players, Deebo Samuel, all those guys. But now that there's Jake Moody, who's probably going to be their starting kicker, and Ronnie Bell on that team, I'm all in. All in. Other than the Lions.
Who probably won't.
And Brady's gone. Gone.
Yeah, because the Lions won't make the playoffs anyway. I know everybody thinks they're going to make the playoffs. They'll go 7-8, 7-10, whatever how many games they play, or they'll win just enough games to be in the middle there. Anyway, but Tim, I've said this so many times, man. Jake Moody is one of the best kids I have ever covered. His family, fantastic. We got to have a couple drinks with Tim and the Moody's in Indianapolis, and that was one of the highlights of my 20-some years at the Wolverine, is getting to know these people. And love Jake Moody, and I can't wait to watch him. He's going to be a 20-year guy there. It's going to be like a Jason Hansen type for them. There's no question. It's funny because my next door neighbor is a Niners fan. He goes, "What are we doing taking a kicker in the third round, in the second round, third round? It's third round."
Third,
yeah. And I said, "Buddy, this is not any ordinary kicker." And so he was pretty excited when I explained to him exactly what they were getting. So love the Moody's, love Jake. Can't wait to see how well he does out there.
Yeah, I was passing by Northville going to the airport last weekend. The Northville kid, that's Jake Moody. I'm always going to think of him every time passing by on the highway there. And hanging out with the Moody's and Tim, absolutely fantastic. We were sitting on a red couch. It felt like we were in Goodfellas. I think we've said that before.
It did. Yeah, it was crazy. It's like, I was telling a joke. We're in Sea Caucus,
Yeah.
It was great, though. And, the funny thing is, last thing about Jake is I've never seen a guy so humble, be so ice cold and cold-blooded on the football field, man, as him when he's out there. It's like, nothing phases this guy. So they did a great job raising him. I'm going to give the Godfather there a little bit of credit, too.
Of course. He deserves it. Thank you, Tim, for chiming in. Hope to see you soon. Let's take another one from the fort, our message board over there. What are your thoughts regarding the cornerback 2 position? Do you think Josh Wallace, UMass transfer, fills this role game 1, or do you think an underclassman will secure the role in fall camp? That's from Go Lou.
It's hard to say because I want to see how Josh does it against this competition, this level of competition. Yeah. Some guys do it better than others. Remember Mike Smith compared to Devontae Jones on the basketball side? You just don't know until you see him, and we will know more in the fall when he goes up against some of these outstanding receivers that Michigan has. I'm not sold on Amorian Walker yet there at that position. I said that today on the fort. A lot of people, are like, oh, geez, But here's the thing. Steve Klinkscale is an elite developer of talent and knows what he's doing back there. That is really not a huge concern, in my opinion, because he's going to develop somebody and they are going to be ready, and he won't make any excuses. There are guys here like Jamon Green that a lot of people didn't think would play meaningful snaps here, and he got better and better as he progressed through his career with the coaching that he got. So I do think Jair Hill is a future stud. I really do. I think Cameron Calhoun's going to be good in time. You know what? I think Jaden McBurrows has an opportunity to start in game one, and in fact, he might be my pick to do that. But I think all those other guys that we've just spoken about are going to get that opportunity, and it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think Wallace will get his shot, and I'm with you, Go Blue 81. I think Hill, man, there's something about him when you watch him in that spring game, and just the confidence that he plays with as a true freshman. But he's got there's a little swagger about him that you can just see. I really like him.
I agree. And I've been on record. I think game one, my money would be on Josh Wallace, but you're right. You just don't know. And I think that's a great comparison on the basketball side. And another name that comes to mind for me is Wayne Lyons, kid from Stanford, Harbaugh's first season. It was a big pickup, at least from my view, when they picked him up. You know, he played in, I'm looking at his bio right now. He played in 2 games as a corner. He played in all 13 on special teams. And fine, you know, he contributed. I do remember him on one play that I don't think so fondly of.
Let's not talk about that one.
But so it could go like that, or, you know, he could be an impact guy. I like his length. I like his athleticism. He's probably underrated there. He's a really good basketball player. You can kind of see that come out on his film, but it'll be interesting, and totally agree on Jair Hill. Really excited about his future, whether that's game 1, game 6, you know, game 20, you know, at some point during his career. I think he's going to be really, really good. Let's see. Somebody
said 2-year captain at Massachusetts. It's a no-brainer. It's going to happen. It doesn't work that way. You know, lots of nice guys are captains too, and it doesn't necessarily translate. So it's all about the level of competition and what you do in the big house. So it absolutely is a debate. R.I.P.
It is a debate. And he was actually a 3-year captain too. Which is insane. So maybe it's different. I don't know.
Maybe.
Let's go to Otis Johnson Jr. Do you think Michigan stays hungry this year? Attitude is 70% of the game. It's funny because there's not much concern on that front. I think part of that, one, is just the culture they've built. They understand what, you know, the kind of work they have to put in. Guys like Blake Corum, I was watching the speech he gave to his campers back home. He held a youth camp this summer, and he was pretty stern, being like, you got to touch every line. You know, he's like, I hate people that are complacent, that don't work hard. So I don't think guys like Blake and guys like Trevor Keegan and Zach Zinter and Mike Sainristil, and you could go on and on and on, are going to allow complacency to seep in. Now, you never know, and when the fall comes, they got to get it done. But I'm not too worried about that. And I'll say this too, the TCU game comes up in about every conversation you have. They accomplished so much last year, 13 wins for the first time in program history, but they're not satisfied because of how it ended.
Yeah, zero concern. There's no question that they're hungry, and it's because the Big Ten title isn't enough for these guys anymore. There's a reason that they came back on that one more year campaign, and it wasn't to just win the Big Ten. They want to win the national championships. So, and they understand to do that, they have to go through Penn State. They have to go through Ohio State. And this group of leaders, Otis, is special. We've seen groups here that have had great leadership. We've seen groups here that have not had great leadership. This team is among the best that I think. I wrote, there are probably 8-9 guys that could be a captain on this team, and that is unbelievable in this era. So, and they all share the same goal. And we were just talking about with Donovan Edwards and Blake Corum, not worrying about who gets the credit. They don't. JJ McCarthy could sit there and complain about, you know, how much he doesn't get to throw the ball. All he wants to do is win. And when you have a group of guys like that, it's pretty special. And there's no question in my mind that these guys are even hungrier than they were the last couple of years. I
agree. And yeah, the amount of guys that have come back, I don't think they're going to let that seep in. Let's go to CWP on the fort.
My man.
Great dude.
I love CWP.
Great poster. I do not know him personally, but
I know that he's got a relative that played at Michigan at a high level. I'm not going to give it away, but
nice.
But you know what? The guys that have stayed with us for 10, 20 years, like these guys have, are MVPs, man.
No doubt. Love seeing his posts. He wonders how many linemen, both sides of the ball, on this 2023 team wind up playing in the NFL for multiple years, parentheses more than one, so 2 or more. If you had to put $100 bet in Vegas down at even odds for each player, who is the money going on? Name them. He says no could or mights. So just get that out of your vocabulary right now. All right?
Okay, so who's definitely going to be in the pros? Man,
I guess so.
Here's the crazy thing. It goes beyond the starters. If you look at guys like Ladarius Henderson is going to be a pro. There's no question in my mind. I think Miles Hinton will be, and these are guys that are vying to start, that aren't even guaranteed starting positions, which is crazy to me. So no mites. This is the interesting part because Zach Zinter will be a no mite guy. There's no question about it. He will play on the interior at the next level and play for a long, long time. Trevor Keegan is a half a notch below, but he will play in the pros for several years. There's no question in my mind. I think Drake Nugent, but here's the thing. I haven't seen him play at Michigan. It's harder to project with those guys. I said Ladarius will, Miles Hinton, I think will, based on their stature alone and what I've seen them do. Drake Nugent doesn't have that huge body, but he's such a smart guy. David Moak played in the NFL for a few years. Remember, 2-3 years at, as small as he was. And people said, all his small arms, his T-Rex arms or whatever. You know what? He did some things there. So I think he will, no might. I can't say that because I just haven't seen enough of him. Gentry will be a pro. You know what? Sharon Moore agrees with you, account 22, and he says it's only a matter of time before he starts here. You're starting to see him get his body back. I'm going to be doing an article with him tomorrow, as a matter of fact, so look for that. We did an exclusive with him in Cleveland from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, and this kid is special, and you're starting to see him get, after a 2-year mission, it takes time to come back. There's a little bit of a difference between working out with rubber bands, in a mission hall or on the road in a hotel room, and doing sit-ups and push-ups than, getting in there working with Ben Herbert, Michigan's strength coach. But I think you're probably right about that. So on the defensive line, Mason Graham's a pro. I said last year he was the best true Michigan defensive tackle, true freshman that I'd ever seen. No, there's no close second, frankly, the way he played like a veteran out there. So Chris Jenkins is going to be a pro. I see him having a Josh Williams type career going back to 1997. He played a lot of years in the pros. So he's talking about linemen only here. Go Blue 81, I believe. So
yeah, otherwise we'd be listing half the roster.
Exactly, we'd be here forever. So those are the guys right now. I think Rayshawn Benny. I want to see more of him, and Kenneth Grant is on his size, and what they said. Once he starts to learn how to play with a little more leverage and technique, and he's really getting it. So those are the guys off the top of my head, and I'm sure there are some rush ends guys, that are going to be in there too.
Yeah, I'd add in Derek Moore.
Yes, Derek Moore.
One day, I mean, we'll see, like guys like Jalen Harrell, Braden McGregor. These are a big last year or two for them in terms of what their pro potential is going to be. I mean, Josiah Stewart, the way he flies around, I would think he's in the NFL.
There's a spot for him. There's a spot for him. Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
He's a football player, as they would call him.
As Jim Harbaugh would say.
Yeah. And I'll add a guy on the offensive line, too, that I'm sure you just missed is G.O.L. Hottie.
Absolutely.
One day.
100%. Yes, I will go 100% with him.
Yeah.
Probably one of the more underrated guys on this roster.
For sure. And he may not get to start.
That's crazy.
Until he's a senior at Michigan. And he was one of the guys that everybody's been raving about. One of the young guys. Now he's a junior, which is insane that class is juniors. Yeah. That everyone was raving about for 2 seasons. Guys come back ahead of him at guard, but he's going to be well prepared once that 4th year comes, and if he has a 5th year or whatever. But I think those are the guys that could or might make the pro.
Which he just said not to say. Sorry, CWP, we suck. All right.
And we will take a quick break to direct people to where to buy the Michigan Football Preview magazine, as CB requested a few minutes ago. Head to the WolverineOnDemand.com. We have finished that thing up. It is at the printer, and it will be shipping next week, either right before or right after the 4th of July, depending on when they get it out. But people should start receiving that potentially late next week, which I am extremely excited about to get that thing in our hands. So you can subscribe to the magazine. You can also just get the Michigan Football Preview magazine as well at the WolverineOnDemand.com. Once it's in stores, it'll be in the M-Den. You'll be able to order it from there. go get it at any of those locations as well. So go and support that. We had a record number of pre-orders this year. A lot of people excited about this Michigan football team. Let's take our next question. This one from FL Blue on the Fort, our message board at thewolverine.com.
Another great poster.
He says, with the potential loss of talent, a lot of talent after this season, a rather anemic 2023 recruiting class, and a significantly harder schedule, predict our 2024 football record. That is way too hard to do. There are going to be guys that go. There are going to be guys that stay. But I'll say this. I think there could be a drop-off. There might not be, though, with the transfer portal and with some of these young guys in that sophomore class, particularly, that'll still be here and leading this team. But it is going to be tougher with the schedule they have, going out to USC, having to host UCLA. At the same time, you could finish number 10 or number 11, and you're in the playoff competing for a national championship. So there's some good, some bad with the way things are going to change.
And anemic is way too, it's not. 2023 recruiting was not anemic. Okay, it was maybe below standards for Michigan, but there are guys on there that are going to contribute. What was the class? Or was it the 18 or the 19 group that everybody was down on, and had 19,
yeah.
And they had a ton of contributors. So let's just stop that crappy talk right there about being anemic. With all due respect. Because there are a lot of guys from that class that are going to contribute. There are a lot of guys that are underrated. Frederick Moore is one that right off the top of my head that I can tell you was severely underrated and who's going to have a great career here. So, and you're right. We don't know. JJ McCarthy could come back on the 1 more year deal. A lot of guys could. So, and waiting in the wings are guys that are going to be pros. Like we've said, you're still going to have a Will Johnson out there. You're still going to have a Jair Hill. You're still going to have, guys coming up that are going to be all Big Ten players. Kenneth Grant is just going to be coming into his own. Mason Graham's still going to be here. You want a list? Let's go right down the line. Derek Moore is going to be back again. Colston Loveland. So, and then you've got an offensive line. You've got Miles Hinton coming back for another year. You've got, they're going to go to the portal, and then you've got Gio Ahadi. We were just talking about that. I've just named off about 10 guys that are probably going to be all Big Ten players or have a great chance at it. So they're going to be just fine. This is a program that is now in rebuild mode, reload mode, not rebuild mode. So that's something we can talk about next year.
Yeah, J.J. McCarthy could come back. Donovan Edwards doesn't plan to come back, but sometimes plans change. I'm not saying they're going to. I think he's going to be gone, but you just don't know.
Blake Corum last year. Who knows?
Yeah. There was one day days he woke up and thought he was going to go and then decided to come back. So it's early for that. Obviously, do appreciate the question. And I was mistaken. It was the 2018 class.
Right.
So that's my bad. Ranked 22nd in the country. At The Athletic last year did a re-ranking of the 2018 recruiting cycle. That class finished 3rd in the nation. They did include Shea Patterson as one of Michigan's signees. Obviously, they got him 2 years later in the transfer portal, but that almost speaks to our point as well. One, don't count this 2023 class out. And 2, the transfer portal is even more, not easy, but
Michigan's better at it than just about anybody. Let's be honest.
And they have some, things that they can't do in there too with admissions and everything else, but they've navigated it really well. So I would have confidence in this staff and what they're able to do, even though, hey, it's not going to last forever. You're not going to win the Big Ten every single year in a row. There could be a year where there's a drop-off. I think that's a year you definitely point to as a possibility, and we'll even see what happens this fall and how that impacts next fall. But there you go. So many coulds and mights in that one.
That's right.
Definitely. Blue is gold. Is that a Notre Dame fan? He says, love the way Caden Cole is our hustle. So I don't think he's a Notre Dame fan. Is he back and healthy? I would believe so.
I think so. I'm going to find out today. And now that you've said that, in fact, I will shoot off a text right now. And when we're done here, and we'll get back to you on the message board. Blue is gold. So would much rather have blue as maize as your handle. I'll see if you can change that. But to avoid confusion, I'm teasing. But you know what? I love his hustle too. He was outstanding on special teams. I don't like him as a return man necessarily, but as one of those guys that's going to do everything else and help your team win. These are guys that you need on your team to help you win. Guys that are willing to give everything on special teams. and he certainly fits the bill. And his dad's a great guy, and he's got a lot of his dad's characteristics. John Colasar, who played in the '80s,
Buckeye killer, yeah, absolutely.
Buckeye killer, one of the best ever,
no doubt, no doubt. In Caden too, like sometimes we talk about and people ask us about who are the most underrated players on the Michigan team. You know, names like Rayshawn Benny and even Rod Moore. I know he's gotten more accolades lately, but come up. But then there's that kind of next tier of guys that you almost forget about, the holders. Caden Colasar, who has just carved out this niche for himself on special teams, has been so good at it. And that when they needed him to go back there, when they were still trying to figure out if A.J. Henning could catch the ball early on in the 2021 season after Ronnie Bell goes down, they put him back there. He was a little hesitant, but he didn't fumble the ball. He kept it off the turf. And then they needed to move him back to his position as a cover guy on the punt team because he's so valuable there. So there is a lot of value in some of those under the radar guys that we don't talk about as much. And Caden's one of them. He earned a scholarship in the past as well. So he's a big piece of Michigan's special teams the last few years being so successful. Go Blue 81 on that note wonders, are we okay at punter this year?
They are. I think Tommy Doman's going to be just fine. Now, if he had to handle both duties, kicking and punting, I'd be a little bit more concerned, but he will not have to, thanks to James Turner coming in and maybe Adam Samaha as a true freshman, James Turner being the transfer from Louisville. So we'll see what happens there, but Doman will not have to kick field goals, and that's not really his preference anyway. I think Doman's going to be an outstanding punter. And let's not forget, Brad Robbins didn't have his best year. He didn't. I'm thrilled for him that he got drafted, and I think he's going to have a great career because I know how good he can be. But I think Doman's going to have a fantastic career as a punter. And speaking with Moody and speaking with Robbins and those guys, they think he's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, no, I think Doman will be just fine. And, it would have been tough to do all three, kickoff, punt, and place kicking. Kenny Allen did an outstanding job at juggling all three of those things in 2016, but even he has his moments where it's like, okay, we got a lot on this guy's plate. I remember the Wisconsin game when he missed 2 or 3 field goals. They end up winning that close, obviously, thanks in part to Jordan Lewis. But I remember driving myself crazy during that game. It's like, geez, they keep getting down and not making these kicks. But Tommy Doman there. And then they did bring in also preferred walk-on transfer from Mississippi State, Hudson Hollenbeck, who can provide some depth there as the backup punter. So they did a really good job piecing that thing together, really, in the last couple of months too, not just since the season ended. When you lose that, that much on special teams, you gotta plug some holes. We do have a super chat here.
Nick's on fire tonight. Yeah,
Nick is. He says we need a more pro NIL AD. I hope Santa
flames Ward.
Yeah. So
I don't think that's going to happen, Nick. And it does seem that Ward has reluctantly been pushed into more of a proactive role with NIL, which again is disappointing because you've got to be proactive with that. Like a couple of years ago, we all knew this was coming. And I think that, in my opinion, Ward's opinion on the matter was, this is either, not going to be that big a deal or it's not going to make that big a difference or whatever. And that certainly is not the case. And it's like Jim Harbaugh says, and Chris Partridge, I think, was the one that said it at one of the meetings. He said, we can't be blockbuster video. And there are some people that think that Michigan has been blockbuster video in a couple of sports. Look at softball, baseball. You look at basketball, sadly, it's not about the now. And I give Ward Manuel a ton of credit for the Michigan Athletic Department and what it's accomplished, but the goal isn't to be good this year and then watch it tail off. You've got to progress to make sure that you're on top. And that is something that they have not done with NIL. And I don't care what anybody says about it. We know that to be a fact. So hopefully this is a positive step in the right direction, and we continue to see more and more positive from Ward Manuel and the Michigan AD in support of NIL.
Yeah, it's funny we have this opinion, although Michigan just won 13 Big Ten championships this last season, so I don't think they're going to do that. No. At the same time, just because, like you said, I mean, there's success now, but it doesn't mean there's not areas that need to improve within the athletic department as well. We do have this super chat, which is a little more fun. Ohio State is completely trash. 3-peat loading.
They are not trash. They've got a ton of talent on that team, and probably more talent on paper if you look at the recruiting rankings and everything else than anybody in the Big Ten. I think Michigan's pretty close at this point, but if you talk about the top level talent, Michigan's got some of that now. Okay, if you look at 5 stars, Blake Corum's a 5-star, period. He's a Heisman Trophy candidate. Donovan Edwards is a 5-star. I think Mason Graham's a 5-star as an interior defensive lineman. I think that JJ McCarthy is a borderline 5-star, right? So, but Ohio State's got a lot of that talent too. They've got better receivers probably. So they've got outstanding athletes on defense, even though their defensive coordinator didn't know how to use them last year very well, especially against Michigan. Probably, lost them a chance to compete in that game. For me, you can't say, to win that game when you lose by 45-23 asterisk.
Yeah.
So
should have been 52.
Yeah. So there's Commander Riker from the Enterprise. Doesn't he look like that's probably before your time? So, but somebody in the comments, please comment. That's Commander Riker. So anyway, they are not trash. They will be good. They'll probably be undefeated or have 1 loss at most when they play Michigan this year. So, but I like Michigan in that game at home.
I'm not worried about the Michigan team overlooking Ohio State. I am worried about some of the fans overlooking Ohio State. Not that it matters. Yeah, obviously. Right. I mean, look, they have a new quarterback coming in, but they also have so much around him, as you mentioned. They did plug some holes through the transfer portal on the offensive line. They got all the skill position guys. They got all those great backs and great quarterbacks.
All those great backs, great quarterbacks, and great
defensive players. And here's the thing too: Jim Knowles, not a great debut against Michigan. He did improve that defense though before the Michigan game. And I was watching something recently on Ohio State, a report out of their spring camp too, where it was like they're going to make some tweaks. They're looking at things. I mean, look. I'm not going to sit here and say they're never going to figure it out. They could. They absolutely could. And it could be a really close game. I think it probably will be. So, obviously, it's a little bit of hyperbole there. They're not completely trash, but
I just hope they keep it close this year. So.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
No, I don't.
That's not what he's. Trust me, folks. We
No.
sit next to each other up there. He will not be saying that.
I will not be saying that.
Game,
no.
But, yeah. Otherwise, we'll have
just hoping for a good game, Clay. Like you say,
we're just there. We're just rooting for the stories.
Yep.
That's what I said coming on the elevator at Ohio State last year. But
yes.
Go Blue 81. Do you guys think we'll get more sacks this year than last year's team? I just pulled up the stat. Michigan with 37 sacks last season, tied for 19th in the country. So that is a lot. I'll say this. I think that, you lose Mike Morris, but I do think his stats were a little inflated, as I've talked about in the past. Early on in the season, had quite a few there in a few game stretch. I think they can find more of a pass rush from the front 4 this season. Something they really, I don't want to say desperately need to do it, but maybe they do desperately need to do it if they want to compete at a national championship type of level. And I think they will be able to. I trust Jesse Minter, and I think something we're discounting, maybe not us, but people out there. Yeah, last year was year 2 of Michigan's defense, but Jesse Minter talked about this spring how much more comfortable he is in his actual year 2. He can make adjustments. He didn't have, he got hired last year in February. This year, he was immediately able to sit down and figure out, what changes he wants to make. He knows what his personnel is. So that'll be big too. But so maybe not more than 37. I mean, I could certainly see it, but I'll say that they'll be more successful getting a pass rush with 4 protecting the back end of the defense there.
Yeah, they won't need to blitz as much. And I think that's the more important thing, Go Blue, is that, because you can get pressure that, might not lead to a sack, but leads to a 3-and-out or something like that. That's every bit as good as a sack. And I think you're going to see some of that. And I think we saw some of that last year against Ohio State. It didn't show up in the stats, but Chris Jenkins had 2 or 3 plays. There was one underrated play where he was, the pass that Mike Sainer still broke up in the end zone. Go back and watch it. The reason that thing was floating was because Chris Jenkins was right there in C.J. Stroud's face, okay? The reason that Taylor Upshaw got the pick on the 3rd down play was Rayshon Benny holding his, you talk about rush lanes, right? And making sure that when a quarterback moves, he doesn't have that rush lane. Rayshon Benny did his job perfectly. He got there, did not get the sack, but guess what? It was every bit as good, even better, because they got the ball back because he forced that interception. So Another huge play. Chris Jenkins got held on, you remember the 1st and 30 play or whatever it was? And he got held on that play. Otherwise, that's a big play, and they're down in Michigan territory. Instead, Michigan's getting the ball back. So all of these things contributed. I think we're going to see more of that this year. I think Rayshon Benny, they said, was one of the most improved players in the spring on the entire defense, maybe the most improved. And then you look at guys like Derek Moore, who I think is going to be an absolute stud. And, guys like a Yabioki, he had a few games last year where he did well, but he was quiet in a lot of games too. So I think Derek Moore has a chance to be an absolute star if he, continues to progress the way he should.
Totally agree. We got a couple more here before we get out of here. This one over to basketball from Nadeem Ahmed. He says, speaking of basketball, we got any shot at landing Javon Quinterly, the transfer guard from Alabama, former teammate in Amari Burnett, who's now here, but he just entered the portal the other day.
Nope. This is one's going to come down to NIL, and I don't think there's any way. I think, didn't he have an issue at Arizona? I think he's been at 3 or 4 different schools now, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds right.
Yeah. So, but he's, I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be more of an under the radar type of guy, or a guy that needs to prove himself a little bit more than that. Sadly, I was really hoping for the Kentucky kid, Antonio Reeves. So that would have been huge, but obviously could not graduate, or something happened there. And that's not going to happen. So we'll see, but it won't be him.
2 more. This one on hockey. Your odds on Adam Fantilli coming back for one more season. The NHL draft is, I think, Wednesday night. Fantilli could go number 2. That was kind of the consensus, but now you're seeing some things, maybe 3, maybe 4, but he'll be right up there. Probably depend on what that organization wants him to do, and he'll probably do what they want, obviously.
I think is Anaheim number 2? Isn't that what they're talking about? I think they have the 2nd pick. And if that's the case, then I think there's a pretty decent chance that he comes back, because they are all about the development, and I think there's a good relationship there. So I'd love to see him come back for a 2nd year and play with his brother. And I think part of him really wants to do that. So, but I think if a team drafted him and said, no, we want you to do this, then I think that's something that he would strongly consider, obviously, doing. So, but let's stay tuned, man. That's going to be a loaded team. It's going to be a fun team to watch.
The thing that makes you mad is the Red Wings are drafting 9th. And it's Chicago, Anaheim, Columbus, San Jose. So
I blame Gary Bettman.
Yep.
Clown. Just kidding. I don't. Not really.
He's not listening. Who cares?
No. Well,
last one, and then we will get out of here. Thank you for everybody joining us. Actually, we might have one more, but we'll go with this one, and then we'll do this other more fun one. But Go Blue 81 again in here says, on that note, our defense was great in the second half of games. Do you think that will be the same this year? I don't think maybe the splits will be the same. That got a little crazy. They're tied with Rutgers at halftime. Not saying that couldn't happen again, or something similar. And then they go out and blow them out in the second half. It kind of worked out that way, but this team was extremely prepared to come out there in the second half. And talking to some of these guys recently too, they almost scoff at all the questions they got about halftime adjustments, because a lot of it was them just continuing to play their game too.
Right.
And that was just a good enough defense that at some point they were going to really buckle down. But your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. And there's so much talent defensively in that room, coaching talent. If you look at Minter, you look at Klink, you look at Jay Harbaugh is underrated, flat out. Chris Partridge was a coordinator,
Exactly.
Mike Elston's an absolute stud. Mike Elston could be a coordinator at just about, at a ton of schools around the country. So, and then you've got the analysts, guys like Doug Mallory, Rick Minter. So it blows my mind, the amount of talent and that coaching talent in that room. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And I absolutely Go Blue 81. I expect that to continue.
No doubt. Here's our last one from the Fort. And I did not write down who asked this one, but what is the worst encounter you've ever had with a fan of another team? It's kind of tough.
This is funny. When I was in school, and Michigan beat Ohio State again, to go to the Rose Bowl, and it was my first year there, and we were walking down the street, and the students were all chanting Rose Bowl. I was a student at the time, Rose Bowl, and I had this guy come up to me, look like your typical Buckeye, he got right in my face, Rose Bowl, and he was right nose to nose with me, and all I said was, oh, you guys probably don't really know what that is, do you, or something like that. And he was being held back, ooh, this guy's gonna come after me. You could smell the cheap beer on his breath. It was Buckeye's best beer or something like that. And but really, other than that, a couple of encounters social media wise with clowns, bloggers that pretending, making up quotes, absolutely insane. There's no accountability anymore. And when it comes to things like that, it makes you really question, the motives of people. In fact, one of these guys, the guy who did this, who made up this quote, and what actually went to one of our colleagues 10 years earlier, I found out, and sent his wife to get an autograph from one of our colleagues, in the business. It's this doesn't make any sense. And it turned out to be a petition to get Jim Leland fired from the Detroit Tigers, and they wanted to get his name on there so they could say that he signed it. So scum of the earth type of people. This guy in particular is bottom of the barrel.
I know who you're talking about, and I completely agree.
Yeah.
Can you tell this isn't a fan story, but can you tell the story from the press box in Columbus last year?
You tell it.
All right, so I didn't see it, so we were a little bit separated.
Yes.
We had the last two spots, I believe, on the end in one row, and Anthony and I were over in the two spots over here on the left in the other row. But, here's some commotion at one point. So Ohio State, they had a great first half, didn't they? Pretty decent. Yeah. So they score, maybe it was the Marvin Harrison. I don't remember exactly. You would probably know. They score a touchdown, and there's a guy behind Chris and John Borton that starts.
Actually, three rows down.
3 rows down. Okay. He starts cheering a little bit. They're all happy. And Chris turns around. He wasn't mad. He's an unbiased journalist, but he just said, hey, some of us are trying to work over here.
No, it wasn't that. It was actually, he was calling for pass interference. As the game went on, and he got more and more frustrated because this guy, he was cheering, and it's all right, it gets annoying. It happens at Michigan State a lot, happens in Columbus, but this guy's supposed to be working stats or something like that. And finally, on one play, it was a Rod Moore play where Rod Moore made a great play, and the guy goes, this is bullshit. Throw the bleeping flag. And finally I looked at him, I said, hey man, this is a working press box here. We got some professionals up here trying to do that. Why don't you do that? And goes, and then he kind of, his buddy just tightened up, and then he goes, why don't you work then? I'm like, I'm trying to, if you just shut your big mouth or something like that. And so that was I felt good about that one. So he didn't make a peep the rest of the way. And then we rode down the elevator with John Cooper, former Ohio State coach, and it was all fun and games. Clay and I had a nice little moment there on the field afterwards. It was fantastic. So, yep. So anyway, that was fun.
From our view, so we didn't see it necessarily. We were across the press box, and after the game, Chris comes up to me and Anthony's like, hey, sorry for almost getting in a fight there. We're like, wait, what?
It wasn't a fight. That guy wasn't going to do anything.
It was an exaggeration, but we had a good time there in Columbus. They were gracious hosts for the most part, I would say.
Yes, they absolutely were. Yeah, they were stunned. That's why, So it was fun.
I don't have anything quite yet, honestly. Some things with MSU, some stuff with Ohio State fans when I used to be a fan. Now, again, just rooting for stories, but we'll accumulate some throughout the years, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So, I will say, there's one when we were in Indianapolis. In Indianapolis, and we had a couple Buckeye fans. The Buckeyes rented out all those hotel rooms, and they couldn't get rid of them because they thought they were going to be there a couple of years ago. And Clay's walking down the street with his Michigan hat on, and this mouthy Buckeye starts going off, and all Clay did was said, hey, good luck in the Rose Bowl, or something like that.
So calmly, it made him so mad.
Calmly. It did. It's like, hey, good luck in the Rose Bowl. It's a nice accomplishment or something like that.
We were going to the cigar lounge. We were on our way to.
We absolutely were, and we celebrated our little victory there too, along with the wait staff at what was the restaurant we went to? St. Elmo's. Saying thank God that Michigan fans are here instead of Ohio State fans. They are cretins and they don't tip well, I believe was the quote. So there you have it.
Great people at St. Elmo's. Yeah, I think the word animal may have been thrown around to describe it.
It could have been. You're not kidding. That's the funny part about this. So, but yeah, that was fantastic. There'll be more of that, Clay. You know what? You're just getting started in this business.
There will be. Hopefully more trips to Indy coming up. And on that note, too, we are 1 month and 1 day from heading down to Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days. So let's enjoy this 4th of July. We will be back Thursday, everybody. We'll be off next Monday for our live show, though, on the 3rd of July. So enjoy your 4th of July weekend if we don't see you before then. But we will be back with our show Thursday, and we will see you then.
God bless America.
That's right.